Good afternoon, everybody. People are standing in the back, so that certainly means the topic is of interest to all of you. Um, to begin with, a huge shout out to my dear friend and comrades here, not the comrades that Professor Bhattacharya was talking about yesterday, to Sarita, her wonderful family, her daughter Samna, Tara, her sister Paru, um, my dear brother Pariyar here, who's been doing excellent work to Samata Foundation, the team of Samata Foundation. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Brother Rajendran, Professor Bhattachan, and also my BAMSEF activist friends here, Paswan, Ambedkar, and others. Purna is here too, and also my fellow panelists who are going to talk about this very soon. So I'm quite excited what you have to say because I have not read my own book, and you have read it at least a little bit. So that's exciting. Um, to begin with, also, this is a special moment for me to be here. I actually was planning to come to Nepal in future, not now. Um, and I had to come now because I thought this was the right moment to come. Not because also the book is out, but also the issue at hand is quite central to what we are going to discuss in the next hour or two, but also what I think Nepali society is undergoing through. There's a lot of transition, a lot of movements in policy as well as non-policy levels. So this is again an exciting, in a way, moment to be here. Exciting so that I think more of people believing in social justice sort of get mobilized, looking at the current state of affairs across the board here. Um, Ambedkar had come here in 1956, and that's one of the significant moments for the Dalits in India, especially because they always refer to the famous speech he gave, which was an extempore. He was asked as a compensation for his one-day delay because he was sick, and he was going to speak on on Buddha and the global significance. Ambedkar wanted to create. He envisioned that the Buddhist countries will come together and form a union as an international alliance, so they can then look after each other in the moments of problems that they might have, political or otherwise. I would imagine that was perhaps one of his deliberations, had he been given the chance. But since he was late, the local activists here were very interested that he speak on Marx, because the Marxism was quite taking hold, and many people wanted to understand how could we forevision the access of Marx to common masses, and will Marxism as an ideology work? So Ambedkar was told an hour or two ago, and that poor man went on stage and gave one of the fascinating accounts, the differences as well as the commonalities. And then, of course, he argued that Buddhism was a right option as opposed to Marx, because what Marx talks about, communism, he says Buddhism practices communism when it comes to its Sangha. But also, Ambedkar was not a blind follower of Buddhism. He was someone who Protestantized Buddha, and he brought Buddha to common masses. He radicalized the thinking of very Buddha, which was in a way not accessible to common masses. He wanted monks to be the social warriors. He said he envisioned that the monks, instead of being ascetics only, should become the walking Buddhas. And so Ambedkar's Buddha is not a Buddha who's closed eyes and meditating. His Buddha is open eyes and walking. And that's the kind of social message he wanted to give. So of course, now then we come into contemporary times, and so on the dais when Ambedkar was speaking, we always have written that Nepal Naresh was there in the speech. And we don't know anything at all, because it matters less to us in the sense of the context. More important that there was a king, and Ambedkar was there, and the king was the chair of the session, and he delivered. That's the only reference. So I'm excited to sort of reminisce that memory that has been told to me since childhood. And being here in Kathmandu, I look forward to visiting one of those places, and also sorts of acquires an importance in our lives. And also, it kind of debunks to many of the Brahmin Marxists we have in India, who undermine Ambedkar's radicalism by saying Ambedkar couldn't have enough hold on Marx. Little did they know that Ambedkar was about to write a book on communism in India and kind of provide a scathing critic. So that's one. And second, also, I am quite delighted that uh, many people have been asking me, and I've been educating myself about the Nepal caste situation, and because of my limited accessibility towards this information, I will try to limit my comments just because I don't want to create a slippage, and I would like to learn more from you as we continue to hold on to this mirror that I call of Caste Matters. Um, you know, I will tell you a few stories so you don't sleep, and then I will give you data, then you can sleep. So before you sleep, um, so I was at Yale University about 3 years ago. I was giving a speech after Rohit Vemula happened, and at the speech, after I gave the speech, and after, as every other reception, I was at the reception, and then there were a bunch of Indian kids who were in their first year, second year undergraduate course. They came to me, and they were very excited, and they also felt motivated in a way. I don't know how much of that was because of my talk, or maybe just they were motivated because the issue at hand was quite provocative. It was about dealing with the question of caste. But what happens in our everyday understanding of caste is we have provided a narrative of caste. People are interested in the stories of caste. People are want to know more because it's an interesting take. So there are two purposes that it serves. One is we feel pity, we feel sorry about these people, and second, if someone thinks in a different way, they feel, oh, we need to do something about these people. There is something we need to do about us. There is always a responsibility on others. So if we talk about the issue of caste, it's always the lens is casted upon Dalits or the people who are suffering. So the caste problem becomes a Dalit problem, and therefore a Dalit has to defend or explain or describe extensively, drenching its own energy. So that talk was little of that, more about showing the Brahmins their own mirror. And admittedly, a majority of the students who came to talk me, when I asked them their names, they were predominantly Brahmins, and the ones who were not Brahmins, they were from the other dominant caste, who came from the what you call a Kshatri, or we call it Khatris, and surprisingly there was no Baniya. Of course, it was a small group, and so the kid, or rather the student, was like totally taken aback in a way, and then he came and he said, so how do you identify one's caste here, and then he stopped, and then I also stopped, and then his friends who were talking to me, they looked at him, and I also looked at him, and then he just gulped it, and he was like, he realized that this was not a sensitive question to ask, because of obvious reasons. And also, when you are trying to understand caste, it's not as simple as to pointing out to people. You have to engage with the cobweb, the kind of complexities that it comes with it. If we immediately simplify it, we then simplify the narrative. And when we simplify the narrative, we try to find simplified problems. And simplified problems are usually breadcrumbs. They are not radical transformations. They are not revolutionary in their vision. They are always time-bound. They are always 10-year, 20-year, 30-year, what you guys do here with your reservation policy. They don't address the structural problems. They don't go to the root. They always provide a cosmetic makeover of the problem. Second incident, I was in South Africa where I did my PhD, and there are a huge number of Indian communities living there. And the history of South Africa is when the British colonized India, they also started colonizing other parts of the world. And so Africa was very much interested. The reason they went there was because there was gold, as well as there was a plantation, sugarcane was there. So they wanted to hire people. And so who are the people who work on the field, who can toil, who can put their sweat and blood together and produce something out of the soil? In Indian context, certainly they are not Brahmins. Brahmins don't sweat. They eat someone else's sweat. Whereas the people who toil on the field are the people, the working class, the Shudras, who have been experiencing their relation with ground is very personal to their growth. So the British hired the lower caste or the untouchables to be the indenture laborers, and so they exported them to foreign countries. There was a circular by the Indian commissioner who was sitting in London that don't hire Brahmins because they are a problem makers. They will practice untouchability, and we can't afford to have untouchability practiced on plantation because we want to create more profit out of this. So what happens is during the passage, the Brahmins lie about their caste before entering the boat. The boat is for 3 months, and when they go, they say, we are Brahmins and we need a separate space. And so on the boat that is nowhere on the land, that is somewhere in the middle of a sea and some ocean, trying to cross through these dangerous waves, they maintain a segregation, and the food is also cooked segregated differently, and that is practiced for good 10 days. And one day a huge wave strikes and the boat just gets mixed up, and now the Brahmin food is here and the untouchable food is mixed, and the untouchables are happy because they don't practice caste and they can eat whatever food it is. Now the Brahmin has to stay hungry because the food is mixed, and this is where the caste dynamics started taking place. So when they land in South Africa, they change their names. The untouchables say, we left this place because we don't want to carry the red shed lower caste identity. We are human beings, and so that's why they gave either new names or they acquired higher caste names. So this population has been living there for more than 100 years. So there was a conversation at a talk, and an Indian friend of South African nationality, who's third, fourth generation, she came to me and she was excited like this kid was too. She's like, Suraj, how do you identify one's caste? Same question. And then I look at her and I was very excited to explain to her. The context was different, the geographies were different. Here, her name was Shehnaz. Shehnaz was curious to know, but also she wanted to engage with the question of caste through an experiences, not through narrative. So she wanted to know how it is manifested, how it is operated. Then what happened in America, at Harvard University, there is a very famous black African American professor who works on affirmative action. And me and her discussed for long about these policies, and I was explaining to her reservation and all. And I told her, you know what, affirmative action policies that you guys do here are almost similar to what we have reservations in India. And and there are similar bigots who refuse the equal opportunity that is given for the people who are oppressed by using all kind of nasty reasons. And she said, hold on, here also we have those white people, the rednecks, who don't appreciate the black people or the people of color to get equal opportunities. And then I say, this is a global problem, this is not a local problem. So why don't we create a international affirmative action alliance where we will collaborate? Because as we did research, at least 80 countries have active affirmative action policies. So it is not unique to one country. They have policies in this or different way, but they make sure the people who have been marginalized, who have been historically suppressed, get into the mainstream. And then I told her about caste system, and she was like, whoa, I did not know about this. Tell me more about it. And now we see three situations: an American Harvard professor, a South African Indian, Shehnaz, and a Brahmin Indian student studying at Yale. Three different contexts, but three different narratives. And those three different narratives originate through three different angles of looking at this issue. And this is how we have to understand caste. There cannot be one arrow or one simplified explanation that will give you a perspective. One person was from a Muslim background, wanted to understand caste through a different experiences. One was a Brahmin, wanted to understand caste through a different lens. And this was an outsider, an external, just wants to understand about caste. And therefore, when we are understanding caste, we need to first of all understand ourselves. Caste is not an exterior thing, it's not an outer thing, it is part and parcel of you. The air you breathe, the water you drink, and the society you share the common spaces with consists of caste markers. You are not untouched by caste. Therefore, whoever will ask me the question about caste, people ask me, so what is caste system? And if he or she is a person of Indian origin or Indian, I ask them, what is your caste? And many people don't like to answer that because they say, first of all, it's not cool, that how dare you ask me my caste? Nobody did ask me my caste. Then if you are not allowing me the opportunity to ask you what your caste is, how can I explain to you what caste is? That means here they want to create a barrier, a huge gulf. They want to stand on that tail end and want to engage with the question of caste. They don't want to personalize. They don't want to be the part and parcel of the caste system, so that they will not be held accountable. Caste system or caste phenomenon is constructed in such a way that can invisibilize your privilege. So when we talk, for example, in Indian context, the moment you say I am Hindu, you conveniently hide your Brahmin privilege. You conveniently hide your Baniya privilege. You conveniently hide your caste privilege. You just parade yourself as Hindu. But when you look at the markers, which Hindu is performing well and which Hindu is underperforming, there you will clearly see the caste dynamics. The Brahmins are overwhelmingly performing well, and the people on the lower scale of the caste hierarchies are not performing well. Now these are the questions that our society right now is not courageous enough to deal with. They want to just have a mirror shown to yourself. So therefore, when a Dalit talks about a caste issue, it is his or her issue, and therefore a Dalit needs to find the problem to a phenomenon that they are not responsible for creating it in the first place. Now Dalits did not create caste. They are subjects of that torturous regime of caste. Now you tell me, how is a person who has not even designed a lock of this room is asked to go and unlock this place when the person who has designed the secret codes of this is not even willing to engage? Room के अंदर धकेल के बंद कर दिया, अब बोला आप अपना figure out कर लो, हम चले बाहर. This is being the crooked strategy of these people, where the people who are within the caste dynamics are fighting, are trying to find a solution to this formula, to this lock that they have been, जिसकी चाबी हमारे पास नहीं है, and whose lock has already made thousands and thousands of years ago, whose cheat code is only with their generations, because they secretly pass to their generation as they keep taking birth. Taking a leaf of wisdom from the what I call Dalit love, because whenever we try to understand about Dalit life, we always understand them as the people who are on the lower end, which it is true. The Dalits are someone who are fighting for certain rights, which is true, and the Dalits are someone who are always creating certain problems, which is true too, because the idea of creating problems becomes a problem when the people who won't want to engage on real ideal questions. जब तुम सही सवाल पूछना शुरू करते हो तब तुम प्रॉब्लम बन जाते हो. जब तुम अच्छे सवाल, सब अच्छा है बोलने लगते हो, you become part of the system, and that is what the Brahminical regime is effectively trying to do. They are trying to co-opt every other progressive as well as critical voice into its regime, and if you start questioning, they use the state mechanism to make sure that you are incarcerated and you are suppressed for long as you can imagine, and that is what has come to the fate of untouchables. Since Ambedkar, we just had one sort of a silver lining. We saw that in the Indian context, Kanshiram came on board, and since Kanshiram, there is now a new energy that is trying to usher into itself कि हम खुद को कैसा देखें. And I think before we even ask a question, caste matters, many people say me, why do you say caste, why do you want to use this book, what is the title, why caste matters? I say because caste doesn't matter, and they didn't understood that, and I said now say it to yourself. तुम खुद को बोल के दिखाओ, caste doesn't matter. हाँ, हम यही बोलते रहते हैं. The very aspect that you are denying that this is of a bygone era, this has something that has not been left with us. Our ancestors have done that, and now it doesn't matter, is the very fundamental problem that we are facing in a caste-ridden society. So today, if you stand in the middle of street and declare yourself casteless and say, I don't consider caste or jati vati ko, I don't see, you are one of the prominent perpetrators of caste stigma and caste violence, because you are again living in denial. Although you are a liberal, or you might sound even at some point a little radical, excuse me, you still fall into the ranks of those people as much as the orthodox people on the other end. Now you will tell me, yeah, but we really genuinely want to know about caste. we really would like to learn about caste. We would really. So why do you need to learn about caste through Dalit stories? Why don't you learn about caste through your own stories, through your own Brahminical annals, through your Baniya or Khatriya annals? Because you are also touched by caste. And when you will learn about your own caste or the phenomenology of caste through your experiences, you will see an ideal picture. You will see how unfairly you have been occupying the positions of power and continue to defend that unequally acquired position without having a question. So let's engage with the metaphors of caste through various denominations that it has offered to us. So if caste doesn't matter, as many people are, and especially the radicals try to come and tell, they say it's an issue of class. Let's engage with the phenomena of class. My answer to them is, let's do that. First, let's get rid of caste. And then they will say, no, caste is not a problem. Class is primarily a problem. Then fantastic. Why don't you give up your own acquired privileges? Why don't you give up your own land? Why don't you give up the resources that help you to maintain your position of power? That position of power you use to oppress us, to include every sort of violence so as to suppress our own voices. Are you willing to do that? No, let's fight class struggle. Whose class struggle are you fighting for? Because the class privileges that you have are primarily derived from the caste that is so sophisticatedly and so prominently holding your position without even offering any other solution to this problem. So today, if caste doesn't matter, why do we see the Dalits underperforming on every indicators? If caste doesn't matter, why do we see the Janjatis still fighting to secure their rights? And if this is a phenomena, today recently I was reading the news of the Public Service Commission, in that the Janjatis, and I was looking at the list, and the Dalits are, for Dalits 92% of them are underrepresented. If caste doesn't matter, why is that not 100%? Why is everybody not represented on equal level? Caste does matter and lives in fabric. The people who deny the phenomena of caste are the people who want to retain the caste system. They want to retain the wretched form of system that they derive immense pleasure. How can you have happiness out of someone's miseries? How can you live every day by looking at one person who is been killed or raped or tortured just because of his or her accident of birth into a different caste? This is a sad society. Caste makes you a sadist society. And if you have to progress, you need to start asking critical, crucial, and ideal questions. Before we begin, we need to talk about morality. Are we moral beings? Let's ask each other this question. Are we morally equipped? Are we really courageous to front the battle against caste system? Answer will come, no. We are morally equipped only to make ourselves good, not to make extra efforts. So in a society that clamors to retain a certain hierarchy and at the same time wants to finish it, it's a paradoxical position in itself. And this is where we need to, for example, ask questions to the people who are not willing to engage with these questions. Because you see, there are orthodox people, there are secular people, there are progressive people, there are radical people. At the end of the day, even if they might not ascribe to the caste status, their siblings, their brothers, their family members still ascribe to it. And when I say family members, I also mean the extension of their caste people. So 1% disassociating from caste is itself not enough. That person has to be cultural suicide bomber. A person who is from a privileged status or privileged caste needs to go back to his or her own community, talk to their own people and fight against them. Because this struggle is not going to be resolved by writing memorandums and having an exchange of letters. It has to be a fight of a certain ideology that will uphold human virtues to the center. We can't have anything but, in essence, whenever we are describing ourselves, we describe ourselves as human beings. But I don't think the people who still practice discrimination are fully developed human beings. These are the people who are animals of a secondary quality, because animals discriminate. Humans should have overcome that phenomenon of discrimination, and simply on the basis of caste, that a person from foreign origin can't even distinguish. At least in a racial context, you can identify a person who is of a Caucasian background, a person who is of an African background. But here in the caste context, the ethnic similarities are so similar that even if a person from some small town comes to Kathmandu of Nepal, it will be difficult until you start engaging and asking curious questions about his or her own belonging. This is how we have made ourselves, or we have become literally a laughing stock of this sapiens that we are habituating ourselves in. So the question remains, when we talk about caste, let's focus also on the people who are suffering at the worst, but also let's focus on the people who are enjoying the most. Because this is a question that we need to address through material needs. Because caste system in the Hinduic order accords you a material status by giving you spiritual sanction. Religion plays an important role in helping you to garner and amass as much wealth as you can. And that you can see through the positions that people hold in temples, for example. Now, that has been one of the contentious topic. In a country, for example, India, where people are living on a poverty line, temples thrive. Temples thrive and it remained unquestioned. Even our comrades, so-called comrades, made sure that their siblings in the temples were secure. Like Stalin did. Stalin did when he was about to create revolution, he went to the Orthodox churches and he said, give me the wealth, I need to fight a war. They gave him the wealth. They did not give him just like that. He asked, he got the wealth, and then he did whatever. I always think, why did the communists not read this part of history so closely? They always taught us what made them secure for another 200 years. And therefore the struggles of Maoism, for example, in India, Adivasis have been put at the altar of extermination. Fighting against a huge behemoth state is foolhardy unless you have an international coalition. You can't fight your state by relying on one or two states. You need a whole consensus. This is not going to be possible. And why do you want to engage with Maoism by holding on to the most vulnerable? Why don't Brahmins become only Maoists and fight against Brahmins? Why don't the landlord, who are again in the Politburo of the Communist Party, fight against their own people? Why do the oppressed people who are still suffering and who don't have any future need to be the cadres when the future is not going to promise them anything but different? They are still going to remain the untouchable, they are still going to remain the lower classes even after the revolution is finished, and we have seen that across the board. So the caste is such a sticky substance that you might even transcend different boundaries, it will still carry with you, because you need a localized privilege. Caste is a very local phenomenon. It is practiced in villages, it is practiced in your small circles. A person from a small village, of 100 people, or let's say 500 people, wants to retain his or her status only among those 100 peoples. And how do you do that? You do that by imposing yourself upon them. You don't care about what's happening in the rest of the world. 7 billion people, you don't care. All your concern is with the localized pleasures. And the pleasure you derive is by committing violence upon them. It's not a voluntary pleasure afforded to you. Whereas the Dalit perspective becomes contrary, it becomes anti-local, it becomes global. It argues for universalist values that are centered around love, they are centered around human rights. And therefore caste struggle, if we deal with a localized perspective, we are only going to get answers within that local phenomena segment. So let's say a feudal lord, for example in India, he or she is a village head of 500 people. They are only concerned about those 500 people and they want to make sure they derive pleasure. Caste makes you localized. It's even befooling the people who are benefiting out of the caste system, because you are not rendering your services to the global community. All your concern is being to a confined, localized space. And when we challenge the caste system, we have to see what has made this Dalits survive. Because you see, in the Holocaust, when the Jews were killed, they still carry an intergenerational trauma. There has been a repeated sense of oppression on them, but Holocaust creates a huge intergenerational trauma, and now they are actually doing and claiming more responsibility on the people who committed crimes upon them. Now here on the contrary, in the caste structure, the people on the oppressed section of caste have been facing this for more than 2005 years of legalized discrimination. The Manusmriti that was indoctrinated and the Kautilya that are the Chanakya and those people right with Arthashastra had doctrinated certain laws that you had to ascribe to. Now 2500 years regularly you are beaten up every day. In a village, if untouchable marries someone from other village, he or she, that woman is forced to consummate with the village head even before she sleeps with her husband. This is a very violent plus painful experience for people who are living this on a day-to-day basis. It is not one time, it is every day, and every day you are reminded of your unworthiness. Every day you are repeatedly told how much of a small person you are or how much of an unworthy person you are. What then made these Dalits to still survive? Because this is a trauma. What has effected a change in them? And I think one of the elements or one of the characteristics of Dalits that has remained underappreciated is the Dalit love. Dalits have not lost the capacity to love fellow human beings. They have still maintained a faith that one day we will still sit with other human beings as equals. They have not given up on humanity. They have not even compromised the basic principles of love. They have still retained that character. Thousands and thousands of years. How come a person next day still wakes up after reading the reports that a 9-year-old girl was raped just because she was from Dalit community and she was going to school alone? This is the kind of sad, nasty society we live in. Then how come the Dalit community still wakes up next day and aims for next something? It's because that Dalit has not lost the capacity to love. And it is because of Dalit love, the civilization in India and South Asia has remained one. If Dalits had lost the capacity to love, India would have witnessed, or other countries would have witnessed, repeated civil wars after every other incident. Historically, Dalits have not taken weapons in their hand. Of course, the Brahminical code prohibited them because they were shit scared of them. If you arm an oppressed person, the first thing they're going to do is kill the person who is going to oppress them. Because oppression has a habit. You oppress today, you oppress tomorrow. Because it becomes a part of chain. And if it becomes part of chain, you are used to it. And people think, and this is what people say the Dalits are used to it too. As if saying the Dalits love that their daughters to be raped. When people defend caste system, they also put responsibility on the shoulders of the vulnerable people who are working on someone's field, that it is their responsibility, without accounting to their own struggle. And I think Dalits continue to be armless because they are still hoping. They are still hoping that we will be able to cherish these dreams. It took 2,500 years for a person like me to come on a stage and address to audience here and across the world. This is a shame. Modernity could have accorded us that way far before. What has taken us this time? India, for example, got independence in 1947. We had a constitution in 1950. 70 years have been passed by, and still there is only one Dalit who is having a fellowship at Harvard, and there are not many. And Dalits are, by the way, 300 million. This is not an achievement. This is a failure, and this is the collective failure of state as well as society. People want to cherish one person because they are always looking for that magical person who they can feel good by saying this is one guy whom we can look up to. And I think they don't feel that this is primarily your making, that they are not 100 like him. And similar circumstances continue to evoke. When we talk about Dalits, we also have to focus on the attention of Dalit spiritualism. You see, the Dalit spiritualism is not mediated by Brahmins. It's a spiritualism that is rooted in their own indigenous culture, like with the Adivasis. However, they are being forced to Hinduize themselves. Like every ruler makes its subjects follow his or her religion. Similarly, the Brahminical colonization that has been happening in India for so long, the Dalits have been forced to co-opt into their into their fold. However, their practices of spiritualism is not concerned with God. It is concerned beyond God. It's concerned with the divine. That is not necessarily rooted in certain foundations of monolithic or polytheistic gods. It's beyond that, and therefore we have not understood Dalit spiritualism, and because we have not understood it, we tend to declare that Dalits are the part of Hindu fold, when in original they are not. They have never been, and they will never will be. It's just the forcible action that is put upon them, and lack of understanding of Dalit spiritual practices and spiritual life, that we continue to declare them someone that they are not. And this creates a huge problem in our academic theorization as well as public conversations that we create, which are more often misplaced. In this understanding of Dalit spiritualism, we need to make sure that the segments of the various classes that are existing among Dalits are also paid attention to. Because the fundamental or fantastic aspect of class question is, it tries to and it immediately accumulates you into its fold. There is always a desire for one to climb to a different class, and once we are in a class, we always hope for climbing a next step. And class maintains that status by giving you or luring you to a next stage promises. In fact, you can't be the top 1 or top 10% in your lifetime. Hopefully, I mean, someone becomes, let me know, but usually the structure is not designed for you. It's the selected few families that are given this. And the fashionable quest of capitalism has been brought by the handlers of neoliberal capitalism, which the managers are Brahmins and Baniyas, or here Khatris in their native countries. To quell the Dalit radicalism, they provide certain doctrinations through various policies, through various NGOs and through various civil societies for the Dalit anger to subsume by offering them breadcrumbs. And I think this is the real structure that we need to also engage prominently with. Now, let me talk about the intellectual class that Ambedkar called is one of the most influential class of the country, of each country. Now he asked a question. He said, every country has an intellectual class which is very prominent, which knows how to change the discourse, which designs a new discourse, which tells the common mass how to look at the future, which is a forevisionary, which is in a way clairvoyant, that decides society's future. There is a lot of responsibility on the intellectual class. However, Ambedkar questions, had Brahmins produced an intellectual of the caliber of Voltaire? Voltaire was critical of the French regime, who was looked upon by the French state as an enemy because he asked real questions. Had Brahmins produced them? Answer is equally no. What has happened? And I think Ambedkar says that he uses the terminology of left and right Brahmins, which is secular or orthodox Brahmins. They are part of the same body of two hands. Therefore, this gestures to the Brahmins, people in the audience here, how much are you willing to be part of these two hands? If you are part of either of that hand, because if you are part of one of the hand, you are always going to protect each other. We need someone who can go beyond this. And it has to be a self-reflection moment. So the intellectual class that we have today is actually prostituting itself to the desires of market as well as the spiritual wealth that this regime is offering. This intellectualizing of your own insecurity has been imploded into what they decide in their future discourse. They tell people wrong messages. They do not uphold real virtues, and this is very visibly seen in the reservation debate that we are having in this country. People are so insecure to give equal opportunity to the people, to the person who has just entered a college, first generation. You have been educating yourself secretly for thousands of years, and one person, first generation, comes into the classroom, you immediately get insecure. That means a Dalit intellectual is so powerful that one educated person has the capacity to blow up the oldest Brahminical structure. And I think this is an insecurity. People have been constantly told the idea of merit. Merit is a mythical, phenomenon. It's a mythical character. It's a mythically placed identification. There is no thing as merit. If marks, the numerical marks that you get are anything but your indicator of merit, then that is just one segment. And the education system that we have today, thank you, that we have today describes the someone's merit based on how much marks did you make for in your exams or whatever you use. You give an exam of only 3 hours. Based on 3 hours of your work, you describe or declare the merit and non-merit of the person. You have undermined the sociological, the personal stories, the background of that individual who has sat in the exam. Now you tell me, if a person coming from a English medium school and a person who is coming from a Nepali medium school are asked to give the same exam in the graduation, who is going to perform well? The person who has already been trained to think in that exam. This has been the unequal system that we have created. Reservation becomes an excuse for the privilege to continue the privilege without a question. In fact, I was telling a newspaper recently, reservation is actually benefiting the Brahmins and the Khatris here. Because their population is 41% something and they have positions 55%. So actually they are having more than what their population share is. If we have to talk about reservation and there is a critique, I think we should also criticize. We don't want reservation. Let's have proportion. If there are 12% Brahmins, there should be only 12% reservation for them. That will create an equality, that will create a democratic setup, whereas the majority of the population is crushed into 45% and now they have to fight among themselves. Even they have the audacity to challenge that and not give any seats in the recent advertisement that they have produced. So this is the kind of regimen they have created under the falsified narratives of reservation. One thing we have to understand, that hard work is not a qualifier for you to retain your privilege and challenge the reservation. If hard work was the qualifier for you to progress, Dalit women would have been the most progressed women in this country. Ask a Dalit woman how much she has to work every day. She has to carry her personal, social as well as societal pressures and still manage to survive, still manage to take forward her community, her society, her family and still remain sane, not losing her own spirits. Hard work is again a misplaced, it's a misnomer in our current identification of so-called merit. I want to tell the Dalits and the other caste people here who are oppressed in the Brahminical regime, especially the youth, that don't lose hope, because you see, these people are afraid of you. They are shit scared of you because they are not used to competition. Competition is done on fairness, and fairness comes with an equal opportunity given to both the candidates. A person who is handicapped cannot go and fight a war with a person who is 6 feet tall and having a good physique. Do you think that's a competition of equality? What we should do instead is, we should not decrease the quality of 6 person, but we should empower this person who is physically or socially been handicapped. How do we do that? We do that by providing them more positive measures. We provide them more support. We provide them more confidence and provide them more opportunities to excel. That is not discrimination against the 6 feet. The 6 feet is going to remain still strong. But why is the 6 feet getting scared even if we offer one help to the person when in fact they deserve 17 to 18 times more help than what the person has? So this is the real problem that we are having now. People in this country or any country who talk about merit are themselves meritless. They don't have the merit, because their merit is premised on Brahminical ascribed knowledges. It's not democratic Shudra oriented knowledge, which includes every form of work. It's not just, see, education opportunity was only given for Brahmins, which is pen and paper work. And castes were part of that too. So that is the same form of system that we follow now. You see, and in our education system, we have a concept of mugging up. We have to mug up everything before exams and then go and vomit in our answer papers. Now this is a very unfair system. This depends on your cognitive capacity. It depends on your cognition. My mother would say, eat a good ghee, you will become sharp like Brahmin. What did she meant was, you will be able to remember what a Brahmin is teaching you. How the Brahmin remembers. This education system is Brahminical. I'll explain you how. You see, a Brahmin has to, if he or she is doing any ritual performances, they have to learn by heart the Veda or the scriptures that they are going to perform or officiate a ceremony. You can't have your notes and you can't read and you can perform. You have to have it by heart. Same thing is transferred into the education system. A Brahmin is used to mugging up. There is no creativity involved. You just read 10 pages for 10 years and then you become an expert in this field. There is no research, there is no scientific involvement in this. Whereas the non-Brahmins who are working on the field, who are coming with creative apparatus, who are working their hand and soil, come with a more creative energy, come with newer forms of vibrations to this already moribund system. So education system in India currently teaches you to be the best Brahmin kid than being what you are. And this definitely helps the person who has been trained to mug up since childhood, which is mugging up. A person from a non-Brahmin background is not used to mugging up. It's not used to mugging up. They are used to do different kinds of things at the same time. So this is where we should start engaging with how merit is formed. Merit is formed the way you visualize yourself in a comfortable space. If you describe merit by saying, okay, let's say we will give 10% for the people who mug up, 10% for people who perform good on field, 10% for people who are good in sport, 10% for people who are good in dance, 10% for people who are good in performing certain kind of arts, in art and literature, and we combine all the human faculties together and make a merit of it, then we can talk about merit. Right now we only have one, which is Brahminical, and they want you to be like a Brahmin, and you can't because you are not, and you will never be, and therefore you will never follow the system of this, and you will always protest. So a Dalit not performing well in a Brahminical system is an protest against Brahminism. It's not because of his or her quality or lack of talent. And again, education is arbitrary. No one can define anyone's credibility or credence based on 3 hours of exam or what one can provide, because it is again very unjustly made. So the question remains, can the Brahmins participate in anti-Brahminic struggle? Sure, you can. And you are very welcome to. But the struggle should be led by Dalits. You should come as a humble servant of the movement, not a boss of that structure that you are trying to dismantle. Because directly or indirectly, your mind will still think in favor of the people who you call your own. Good willing you must be. You should come with an experiences. Let 5-6 generation go of you being on a receiving end. And then maybe we can talk of equality, because inequality has been laden so much. And therefore the superiority and inferiority is so much infused in our mindset that one Brahmin, for example, in the Bahujan Samaj Party in India, there is one Brahmin called Mishra. All the Dalits are afraid of him. It's a Dalit political party and Dalits are afraid of him. I say this is what inferiority complex does, because caste system has put that in your head. Party is led by Mayawati. Her majority base is Bahujans. They are not Brahmins. And there is only one Brahmin. And entire Dalit community is afraid of her. They say this Brahmin, because of him we all do this. That is what caste system does. It doesn't even give you a confidence. Maybe he is a humble servant of Mayawati. People don't have that capacity to think, because caste system has constantly told you that you are lower, you are inferior, that you are always subservient to someone. You will not be able to cross these borders. You are always going to be someone else's reference point, but you will not become yourself the author, an architect of your own future. This is what we need to address. And when we talk about why caste matters, is because every moment we live, people are saying caste doesn't matter. People are making new strategies. They come in different colors, different backgrounds, different sexual orientations, and they will still tell you caste doesn't matter. And it is up to the responsibility of the oppressed to tell them caste matters, but in the language that they are comfortable with, not in the language that will make feel Brahmins good. It has to be the language that the people on the oppressed scale are coming with an organic form of knowledge, which is not mediated with making other feel good. And therefore, anti-caste struggle is not making someone feel good. It's about carrying the legacy of your ancestors who have been toiling on the field and farms as slaves, and now you have gotten the opportunity to stand as equal beings. at least constitutionally. You should utilize this opportunity that was not given to your ancestors. Stand equally and claim for more that your ancestors could never have. Your ancestors fought for it. They went to the field not knowing when will they come back home. The father went to the field not sure what will the landlord think of his or her day, and he might be killed or his hand might be chopped. They lived in the direst conditions, but they still lived and they survived. Dalit love was aimed, but they also hoped that one day my generation, my kids' kids will stand here equal, go to top schools and look into the eyes of the oppressors and say, yes, we are equal and we'll fight on our own terms. And I think this is a new message that we need to cultivate into our minds. We don't need to get our validation. We don't need to validify our own theories and our own actions by looking at someone who's been oppressing us. We have to create our own theory. We have to create our own action, and we have to be inclusive. We need to make sure the anti-caste struggle is multi-caste. It cannot be mono-caste struggle, because if you create a mono-caste struggle, you will reproduce hierarchies. It is always a fear. Frantz Fanon, when he was talking about African revolution, he said, what if blacks get the independence? That's fine, but are blacks going to be the blacks, or they are going to be the new whites of their society? And therefore we need to pay attention to the class dynamics, because privileged Dalits still have problem identifying themselves as Dalits. They still have reservations about reservations. They still want to climb the ladder of an elitism, which they should know they will never be, because even if you are a CEO of a bank, you are still chamar, you are still that untouchable that they have been told and thought about. I will tell you a story of my friend. He lives in Bombay, 30th floor, 34th floor apartment. Works for a corporate and makes it load of money. Super rich. I go to his house and he's commanding. He went through the education reservation system. He got reservation, got into best schools, IIMs, and after IIM got into a good job working for a multinational company, and now having a fair amount of good life. Having an apartment in Hiranand. Provided him an opportunity to be who he is. Even though he is on a managerial position, he is making good amount of money, his colleagues are still casteist. They are not allowing him to be a proud Dalit. They are making him insecure. So he invited me to his house and he lamented to me for 3 hours of our dinner. He told me the kind of situations he undergoes, the kind of operation he faces, the kind of navigations he has to do. And at one point he said, I have stopped looking for Dalit candidates, because my colleagues will say, you are a Dalit, that's why you hired a Dalit. I say, have you ever questioned that there are the managers of the 15, he told me there were 6 Brahmins and the CEO was a Brahmin. Have you ever questioned your CEO, why are there 6 Brahmins? Because the Dalit is being pushed at the corner and he or she has to prove his credential and his original work irrespective of anything. Many Dalits, because of this heavy Brahminical indoctrination, remain confined to it. And I think before we cultivate a mind of a certain nature, that is of a progressivism of some sort, we need to make sure that our values are not compromised, and the values are very much cherishing spirit. They offer us that guidance. They offer us an uncompromising way of looking at future, as well as they put us grounded. And those are the values that your mother, your grandmother, your father, your grandfather have bequeathed you. And those are the values we should always cherish. We, as I read in an African American poem, they say, I am my ancestors' wildest dream. That's a very powerful poem. Let's listen one more time. I am my ancestors' wildest dream. That means it's not just a dream, it's wildest. They just thought maybe one Dalit will one day go to Harvard and will do something. I am my ancestors' wildest dream, and so are you. We need to think together and we need to progress together. Thank you.